Yeah. Rest in peace to all the kids that lost their lives in the Parkland shooting. The song is dedicated to you.
Up and away, up and feel the walls in my brain and they're caving in. Outside those walls, there's an ocean. I can't swim, especially with all these waves.
How could you know, Jaden?
Okay, she keep calling every single night. And I don't mind, but look at the vibe. Almost to the God, I'm in your mind. Swear I wanna die, yeah. When you cross my little, wanna die, yeah. No, I'm not alright, yeah. I might start a riot, yeah. I'm so fucking tired, yeah. So, what you say? Feeling good, I'm feeling great. Tired of the fucking hate. Stacking shit all on my plate. I'm walking in pride, trying to solve my problem. Through the night, finding vibe. Moonlight sonata. I tried it at night, but you see the pills in my eye. I tell her that I'm high, but she don't seem surprised. Walking in pride, trying to solve my problem. Through the night, finding vibe. Moonlight sonata. I tried it at night, but you see the pills in my eye. I tell her that I'm high, but she don't seem surprised. Or maybe I realize that my life is a ride. Buckle up, hold tight, take a left, turn right. GPS don't work, can't see at night. So it's getting hard to drive. Anxiety to stoplight, hard to think, easy to cry. I know something's not right. Done the pain with fun times, supermodels, park line. Remember that one time, everything was alright. Outside my misery, I think I'll find a way of envisioning a better life for the rest of us. The rest of us, hope for the rest of us. The rest of us. Okay, she keep calling every single night. And I don't mind, but look at the vibe. Almost to the God, I'm in your mind. Swear I wanna die, yeah. When you cross my little, wanna die, yeah. No, I'm not alright, yeah. I might start a riot, yeah. I'm so fucking tired, yeah. So, what you say? Feeling good, I'm feeling great. Tired of the fucking hate. Stacking shit all on my plate. Up and away, up and feel the walls in my brain and they're caving in. Outside those walls, there's an ocean. I can't swim, especially with all these waves. Up and away, up and feel the walls in my brain and they're caving in. Outside those walls, there's an ocean. I can't swim, especially with all these waves.
Hey guys, so I got a question from somebody and I thought it would be pretty interesting to talk about it in this video. So the question is, how do we increase reps in skills such as front lever presses or front lever or pull-ups in the case where we have 1 or 2 reps, and also when we have 5 or more reps? It's hard for me to interpret this next sentence, but I think he's saying that a lot of people are saying you should do a lot of drop sets. Yeah, so my take on this is maybe a little bit different from what you might be used to hearing. I think what's been circulating around a lot is this idea of specificity and the importance of training for what you want, right? So if you want to do more front lever pull-ups, you need to do more front lever pull-ups, right? The idea that your training has to be hyper-specific to your goal in order to achieve it. I definitely get the value of this methodology, but I don't fully adhere to it, and here's why. Especially when you only have a couple of reps or less, I think that spamming skills is more prone to injury, and I also think that it's not super efficient. Personally, I don't have the kind of work capacity to do 20 sets of an exercise in one workout. You might see a lot of really strong athletes do that, and I don't have that kind of time or energy, so that kind of spam method is not super appealing to me. And I think the second thing I wanted to mention is there's like a false, like this idea of specificity is kind of misleading because when you only focus on the goal and not on where you're at, then you're not really being specific, right? So let me take an example. If we're talking about the front lever pull-up and your goal is to do the front lever pull-up, you would think that you should just do more front lever pull-ups. The problem is that might not necessarily account for, you know, your limiting factor in your kinetic chain. So let's assume the front lever pull-up can be broken down into three aspects, which is first the bottom phase where you're fully stretched out, the top phase where you're trying to close that range of motion, and then also like the whole thing where you're doing the whole pull-up, right? So in the bottom phase, to initiate that pull, you're probably going to be using more of your lats. And then in the top phase, you're going to be using more of your rear delts because your lats are already basically fully shortened. And throughout the movement, you're going to be like stabilizing with retraction, right? So that's kind of like a continuous part of the movement. Now, I think a really common problem that people have when they start learning front lever pull-ups is they overcompensate with their lats. Basically, they tend to open up their shoulder too much at the bottom and they kind of momentum pull into the top, and their hips are tend to drop very low, and their pulling path is not strictly vertical, right? It's like kind of C-shaped. So that's kind of like a symptom of over engagement of the lats. If your weaknesses are more of that like rear delt activation and your retraction, and you have a tendency to overcompensate with your lats, then training the full progression that maybe you can do for 1 or 2 reps with those compensations is not going to be specific towards your situation. I think one thing I would recommend for people is to first train like the correct activation and train for their specific weakness in that kinetic chain. And second, I think it's really important to not ego lift, right? So if you can do like 1 or 2 FLPUs, that doesn't mean that all your volume should be full FLPUs. If you unlock a skill, that doesn't mean you suddenly only train that skill and then you forget all the regressions, right? I would say, let's say you're at the straddle level for a pulling skill and then you unlock the full for like 1 rep. Your volume shouldn't go from this to this, right? It needs to slowly titrate up as you get stronger and more confident and as your body adapts to it. So if you have like 1 or 2 FLPUs, maybe you can do a top set or 2 every time you train the skill, but you should probably still be training regressions, in a specific rep range and as specific to the full progression as possible, with the correct activations and with an adequate amount of volume, right? And that's going to be a lot less stressful for your joints and lower injury risk. And I think it'll be a lot more specific towards where you're at rather than just the goal. I think there's this idea of normalization of a skill that can be misinterpreted as doing something that you're not able to do, right? And that's not the intent of that idea, right? Normalization isn't ego lifting. It's just breaking down that mental barrier that might be stopping you from training specifically towards that skill. But it should not mean ego lifting. That's kind of my thoughts in terms of the 1 or 2 reps of like an FLPU. But what happens when you have 5 plus? I would say it depends, right? Depends on your training goals. Once you get to the point of doing like 5 pretty clean reps, that does open up the door to variations. So maybe archer variations, maybe wide variations. And for me, I had sat by the time I could do like 6 FLPUs or so. But my context is kind of different because I am like pretty strong at straight arm pulling compared to my bent arm pulling. But yeah, it's a bit of a question of what you want to do, right? Because you can start training variations. You can start training way more volume in the specific progression that you're working towards. So if you're training the full, you can start doing like working sets of like 3 to 5 reps for maybe a lot of sets. I would say it's still important to include regressions in your routine, whether it's banded holds or like body weight regressions, just because no one's always going to be the strongest every day. You're going to have days where you need to tone it down and train things that aren't as stressful on your joints. But yeah, I think when we talk about something like, let's just say, your volume, right? How many sets you should do a workout, how many sets you should do a week. I think this is a pretty individual number. You can't really prescribe a perfect number for everybody. I think the most important thing is to have enough training experience to tell what your body needs, and also be practical with your lifestyle outside of training. For me right now, I probably do no more than 5 or 6 sets of pull per session, and if I'm training consecutive days, right, I probably don't go that hard in terms of volume on a given session. Yeah, so if we're going to be talking about training frequency, like how many times you can train per week, it kind of depends, right? If you're training more variations, then potentially you can train more times per week. And I'll give an example, which is myself. I kind of split up my pull training into components where I focus on a particular aspect every session. So one day I might be focused on very short but powerful combos. Another day I'll be focused on one particular skill like SAT, which requires a lot of retraction strength for me, and a good amount of shoulder extension and external rotation. I'll have days where I want to focus on the bottom portion of the front lever pull-up. So I'm doing like paused reps from the bottom, and I'll have days where I'm focusing fully just on the shoulder extension in this very narrow range of motion, so like near this range of motion, and that can be done with Victorians or dragon presses or just touch front levers themselves. Yeah, I think because I can kind of split up my training goals for the day to focus on individual aspects of my pull, that allows me to train more frequently throughout the week without overburdening my body. I only do like maybe 4 to 6 sets of pull per session. I would say I train between 3 and 5 times a week right now because of my work schedule and because of just how my body adapts to training. Hope that answers the question. If you guys have any other interesting questions, feel free to put them in the comments and I'll see if I can answer them in a video. So, see ya.